I'm at the Wesley Street Jail. I'm with Sheriff Gary Schutte, Under Sheriff Chris Simpson, and Jail Captain Anthony Stewart. And we thought we'd come inside the jail and take a look. Of course, you know that the new jail is on the ballot. There's a lot going on, but we're here to see some of the stuff and why a new jail is needed, and talk a little bit about what we're going to see today, Sheriff.
Okay, so where you're at right now is the hub of the jail. This is the booking center. This is where every arrest in Jackson County comes for processing. Every person who is arrested by any police agency comes to my jail, and they get booked and processed where we're at right now. So where these gentlemen are working right now, they're taking in phone calls from different people. They're processing people with their photographs and their fingerprints. They're also preparing people for court, getting them in either on Zoom court, or they're actually transporting them over to the courthouse by our secure means. So there's a ton of things going on right now inside of this facility. You see we have different inmates that are out for particular reasons, whether they're making phone calls to arrange for bond, or they're actually talking with the judge on Zoom court, or perhaps they're waiting to get into an isolation cell because of a problem they had in the cell that they were in. That's one of the issues that we have here, is we don't have enough isolation cells. So in our county of 160,000 people, we have 4 isolation cells.
Wow.
And we're supposed to have 25 for a population that size. So we're constantly juggling these folks to try and get them into the places they need to be so that we can keep them safe. So it's a real balancing act, and it's very difficult for us.
Of course, you know, the building is aged, and we know that we're going to get to see some of that stuff. But as far as functioning and being able to work at the highest level and have the utmost safety under Sheriff Simpson, it's just not able to be done in this current condition.
You know, you're absolutely right. The state of the jail does not give us the best option to be safe and secure. And there's two echelons you need to look at this from. The echelon first is actually from the safety of the inmates. We have a lot of inmates in and out of here, as the sheriff stated, going to court. Some even transferred over to MDOC. Some are even released. The other component to that is the safety of our deputies. And they work here 12 hours, every day. 24-hour operation here, and they need a facility to support that and support them to ensure they are safe. The environment they work in is safe, so they can go home to their families. That's paramount for my office. It really is. Safety and security from both echelons of the inmates and our employees here.
Now, Captain Stewart, obviously very familiar with the jail. Talk a little bit about, your day-to-day and things that you have to do kind of outside of the box to make sure things are done kind of okay and get running in this current jail.
Well, actually, due to our inadequate staffing, we have 4 staff on night shift, 5 staff on days. I'm actually interjected into the mix. Just this morning, I was dealing with the individual that was off his psychotropic medication. He was acting out. The problem is, like the sheriff alluded to earlier, is we don't have enough isolation cells. So we take one person out, try to stabilize them while we got another one. The other component is COVID. Having individuals come in with COVID, having max cells, 14 men cells, one person gets COVID, we isolate that person. Now that entire cell is a cohort, which means no one can go in, no one can come out. From a capacity standpoint, it's really problematic because it impacts our ability to take in new arrests.
It's amazing, and we're going to take a look. We're going to go to some spots you guys are going to show us, but I want to get back to the language on the actual ballot. If you read the whole thing, it can kind of be a little confusing.
Absolutely, it is confusing. One of the things that is on the ballot right now is this language that talks about the downtown development authorities may get a portion of the millage depending upon certain circumstances. And it says in accordance with state law, this has to be on there. Well, that's absolutely correct. So the way that works, it's really simple. Inside those boundaries of the downtown development authorities of whatever jurisdiction that is depicted on that ballot, they get a certain percentage of the millage that's collected within those boundaries. So for instance, if you live in Liberty Township or you live in Concord, you're not paying for the Downtown Development Authority in the city of Jackson. And the money that comes from the Downtown Development Authority from the city of Jackson is a very, very small percentage, maybe 1%. I don't know exactly all those percentages because they vary a little bit depending upon the different authorities, but it's very small. So it's just a tiny fraction of the millage. It doesn't mean that everyone in the county is supporting a downtown development authority in the city or whatever the village may be. So it's really important that folks understand that because that language can be a little bit confusing.
Well, I want to thank you guys for inviting us in today and giving us a little tour. I'll let you guys lead the way. Yeah, so obviously you can see repair needs to be done, but this stuff can't be repaired. It's too old. It's not built properly, right, for this age?
Well, the problem is we don't know where the leaks are at.
Right.
And you can see, some of the leaks that are in here. This is all asbestos wrapped piping. So we have to abate the asbestos to get at the leak, and we don't even know where the leak's at. We have to try and figure out where it's at. This just happens to be where it's pooling down in these different areas that we have the leaks at. So trying to make that determination is hard, also because these pipes are cast iron, so they rust from the inside out. So even when we abate the asbestos, we still can't see what the cracks
I assume you're relying on some of your guys' handyman skills because you need like a full contractor in here every single day.
You're right.
All right, so we're in the boiler room of the Wesley Street Jail, and it doesn't have a regular thermostat in here, does it?
No, so there's no thermostatic control in the building. What we do is we monitor the cold air return that goes into the boiler, and then we adjust it accordingly. And I'll show you some of those handyman skills that you were talking about. We have a hole drilled into the cold air return, and we have this meat thermometer that's stuck inside of it. And that monitors the temperature from the cold air return, and then we adjust it depending upon the time of year. So we have this little guide here. Winter heat between 55 and 60 degrees, and summer cool between 70 and 85 degrees. So how do you adjust that? Well, we've got broken off valves here. So we use these vice grips to turn the valve to adjust the temperature. And then whatever we need, we use the bottom here, whether or not it's colder onto the left or hotter onto the right. We put the steel rod into it, and then we prop up the end of the vice grip.
So again, we're down, we're in the jail. Are we in the basement or are we on the first floor?
We're on the first floor.
Okay, so first floor, and clearly there's water damage, and it looks a little bit more significant in here than in that hallway.
Right, it's really difficult for us to be able to isolate these leaks. Like I was telling you, what we have here are chronic leaks that never stop. We can't figure out where they're at. These pipes are buried into concrete that's 2 foot thick in some areas, minimum 16 inches thick in other areas. So it's a tremendous cost and a tremendous amount of labor to try to get at the leaks, so they just never get fixed.
All right, we're out here. This is the famous gate that even I could limbo under, but it's, obviously this is a problem. It's a bad look, but it's a safety issue.
Absolutely. So here, this is the main gate that everybody comes through, every police officer comes through when they're transferring custody over to us inside of the jail. As you can see, there's a big, huge slope here, and there's a 2 foot gap underneath the gate. Well, if we have a catastrophic incident inside of the jail, all the inmates have to come out into this area. Obviously, we're not going to be able to keep them in. Now, we do have a plan, so I don't want anybody to panic, but we shouldn't have to worry about this kind of thing. This should be taken care of. But what we found in furthering our investigation of the jail is that this is a symptomatic issue of a much larger problem. And I'll show you what I mean about that here in just a moment.
We're in the Sally Port at the Wesley Street Jail, and from one of my tours before, I learned that it's only one lane. So if someone has to come in, someone gets brought in for a DUI, someone gets brought in for an aggravated assault, you got to constantly move cars around. It's just not efficient.
Right, it isn't, and you described it as coming in as a one-way shot in.
Yeah.
So when that first person comes in, or the second and third comes behind them, second and three can't leave until one.
Right.
So it's a backup, and it's not efficient. And in all actuality, it should be somewhere where they could come in and leave out at the same time. Right. So you have an egress coming out.
This is the old fire escape.
Okay.
The 2002 edition actually put in a new fire escape, but this is the old one that used to be used. This is the 1978 addition to this facility. And I was telling you about in the parking lot, we had that big dip and that 2-foot gap. So this is the other symptom that we have of a much deeper problem here. What we have is the 78 edition, and it is pulling away from the old structure. So when you get up higher, there's about a 6-inch gap at the top.
Yeah, I mean,
right
I
now,
have my hand right here. There's also, even in here, Gary, I can
absolutely
almost get my fingers in there.
Yeah, there's cracks all the way through this portion of the facility as well from the settling. It's specifically in this corner right here, but the entire 78 edition is actually pulling away from the wall. So when I tell people the jail is breaking apart at the seams, it literally is breaking apart at the seams. Now if you look over here, and when you get your camera up here, you can see, you can point right into this side, and you can see right through to a jail cell.
That's amazing.
So it's incredibly dangerous. This is something that causes me a lot of concern. One of the things I'll point out too is you see all this Category 5 wiring all the way through this facility. Well, that's because there's nowhere else we can put it.
You can't drill through these walls.
No, they're, like I said, they're 2 foot thick, 16-inch thick minimum inside walls, and they're all poured concrete. So the only thing that we can do is string these wires together and run them on the outside of the walls.
With Captain Stewart here, are we on the 3rd floor,
Yes,
Captain?
we are.
So talk a little bit about this design, this setup, and why it's a problem for your deputies.
Absolutely. This is a linear design, which is an old, antiquated design. This design was popular in the 1800s. So you see it in a lot of the older prisons like the Michigan Reformatory, the former state prison of Southern Michigan is now closed. And why it's problematic is because you have all these blind spots. So when you get around this corner, you're going to see an isolation cell. Yeah. This isolation cell is at the north end of the floor, and the officer's desk is at the south end. So when this was designed, it's problematic. You want your isolation cells where you have your individuals that are suicidal, homicidal, problematic, mental disorders close to the officer station. So this deputy now makes rounds twice an hour. So when they're walking around, they're looking, making sure everybody is fine. Then as we get around the next corner, you'll see the 12 and 14-man cells. Those cells in and of itself are problematic because it's difficult to separate people that are having conflict. Because this facility is so antiquated, and the heating and cooling issues that we talked about earlier, we showed you, it's prone to get people agitated.
So this is a panel you opened up in kind of in the cell area. What is this, Sheriff?
So this is the access to the plumbing. So this gives you an idea of when we have a plumber come in to try and fix this stuff, this is what they're trying to deal with. So this particular area right here, they can access it actually pretty good, comparatively speaking, to the other ones that we have. But you can see how difficult it is for them to get there. And it costs us an extraordinary amount of money to get that stuff fixed. And obviously it's buried in that concrete, so how do we make a determination where those leaks are at? So this gives you an idea.
Captain, we're outside one of the cells, and interesting story about what you guys had to do to this particular one when a lock broke.
Absolutely. This is an old design, not only with the linear design of the facility, but also with the Folger-Adams style key mechanism. Folger-Adams keys were designed in the 1800s because they wanted to make a key large enough that when an officer or deputy put it in their pocket, they wouldn't take it home. Most modern facilities have discontinued Folger-Adams keys, and with that said, there's not vendors around locally to deal with it. In this particular case, because of our heating system and cooling system, it's extremely damp at all times, and what it causes is the locks to sink. And what happened is last fall, we had an individual deputy come and try to utilize his Folger-Adams key in the lock, but when he turned the lock, it just kept spinning. All right. Obviously, that was problematic. We have inmates in there. We have to have access. So we end up torching the doors off. You can see where they were torched off. The problem is there was no one locally, even in the state, that still managed Folger-Adams locking mechanisms. So we actually had to search, and there was only 5 in the country that did it. The closest was Wisconsin. So we contacted that individual, flew him in, and had him work on the key. It cost us approximately $5,000 just to get this locking mechanism working. And you know, we had to obviously pay for him to put him in a hotel. And he said, this is just a symptom,
right.
Because just like this lock mechanism, due to the atmospheric controls that we can't control with regards to heating and cooling, every locking mechanism we have on all 4 floors are going to be doing this as well.
Okay.
So it's going to be extremely problematic and something that we have to deal with.
It's just not, it won't be sustainable to constantly fly in someone from Wisconsin and fix locks. It's just, it'd be ridiculous. Of course, you have to have a medical facility inside of a jail, and this is your medical facility. What are some issues right now kind of with the facility and able to run as efficiently as possible?
First and foremost, the medical staff is fantastic. Mm-hmm. They do a great job with what's giving to them,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they make it work. And you want this area to be sterile.
Mm-hmm.
Like anybody, when they go to their doctor's appointments, their doctor's office, you expect it to be sterile and clean. Well, here we do have some functionality problems with that, and actually right behind you is one. Sure. And you can see where there's more or less a pan that is catching a continuous leak. And
one of those leaks where you really don't know the origin.
Absolutely. That's why it's been more continuous than anything. And we do have a transparent tube there, so you can see you know, what's coming down that tube. And it isn't the most sterile at all.
No.
And it actually is going into a bucket here below us, where that bucket, once it fills up, you know, we dispose of it and put it back here.
Yeah.
And, you know, if this is an auto garage or something like that, that may be acceptable.
Yeah.
But this is a medical area.
Right.
And we want our medical staff that we contract with to be comfortable, be safe as well.
Talk a little bit about kind of the conditions in here. Obviously, they could be better, but talk about a couple of things that you guys deal with.
It's very small. Everything you could see is kind of worn and torn and been beaten on a little bit. We do the best with what we have. They're good at keeping us stocked up with what we do need to get everybody taken care of. It could be a cleaner environment, obviously, with no pipes dripping mold or water or sewage.
Soon enough, right?
Yeah.
Now, every floor in the jail obviously has a location where a deputy is going to be sit and provide watch, continue their daily job, their responsibilities. They don't just sit here and have snacks.
No. It is, I mean, they're here for 12 hours in this small area, and they make it work. On top of their hourly duties that they have to do of, you know, walking, mm-hmm. helping with medical runs, chow, disruptions. On top of that, to walk around and do physical checks as well, to make sure every cell is in order and everybody is safe and doesn't need any attention. Mm-hmm. They also have to look at the monitoring screen that is here, because they can't be one place at all times, and there's a multitude of locations. So they have to review the cameras, they have to write reports. And this is, again, 12-hour shift in this area right here. As you can see, the long hallway from the isolation, obviously they can see it through a camera, but they still have a little travel to get there. Our radios don't work the best inside of this facility. Just because of the way it was structured back in the 1950s. It is absolutely at one of the highest echelons in my responsibilities to ensure our deputies here are safe. I want them to be comfortable when they come to work.
So this is an important part of the jail, but an interesting part of the jail. Talk about kind of these rooms, what happens here, and kind of why maybe this style is antiquated.
Absolutely. Well, just first to understand with our population, this is really true for all correctional facilities, both state and county. We have a high population of individuals that have mental disorders. Mm-hmm. They come in, they're high off methamphetamines, they've been drinking, and they're not taking their psychotropic medication. So when they come in, they're very erratic. And you know, as we've discussed previously, the first 48 hours for us is really critical because that's the highest rate for suicide attempts. So we need mental health professionals to come in and speak with these inmates. because this place is so antiquated and designed in 1952, the mental health crisis in 1952 wasn't managed like it is in 2022. So because we don't have adequate space, this is the office that our mental health staff use. This is basically a non-contact visiting booth. So our mental health practitioners are on that side of the window, and the inmates sit on this side of the window, and that's where they conduct their interviews and their counseling. And as you know, this is not ideal. It's extremely problematic, and even when you think in terms of recruiting staff to want to come in, this is the environment that they have to use to provide that service.
Well, I want to thank you guys and thank you to Sheriff Schutte for this tour, and it's really been amazing. Captain Stewart, thank you. Under Sheriff Simpson, thank you guys very much for showing us in the community what is going on in the Wesley Street Jail. I know people have questions and aren't sure about everything. If anyone has any questions about the millage or some of the ballot language or the total project, what should they do?
Well, there's a few areas where they could do. We always invite and have our doors open to anyone who wants to come down to the sheriff's office. It's no secret where we're at. They can call, they can email. We do have a Facebook page that is constantly running as well. So we field all questions. There's on our Facebook page, there's a typical question and answer for the most common questions that we've encountered, and I think that has pretty much been answering a lot. There's pamphlets that we have that has more information about it as well. So we constantly will invite the open community to come here, seek out those resources that we have in those places, in those spaces, and if they have something else, again, give me a call.
Cool. Well, thank you guys again. I
Thank you so much
appreciate
for
it.
coming.
That's our quick tour of the Wesley Street Jail.